Hi friends, I'm Liz.
I'm Robby. Welcome back to our channel, Bookworm Couple. Today we are going to be talking about the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, Empire of Storms. I think it's the 5th book.
It is the 5th, and I was thinking that when I was reminding myself about it. I can't believe this is only the 5th book because it feels like such a you've been through so much of the series.
It very much feels like the penultimate book, but that makes sense when the next book takes place at the same time. So technically, it kind of is.
It's the Schmentultimate.
Sure.
I'm funny.
Okay. Just some thoughts, I guess,
Get
before
in there. How did you like it?
Go into spoilers. I did. I liked it. I think I liked it a little bit more than the last one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that I'm interested to see what other people's opinions on this book are, because I'm trying to think of how to say this without doing any spoiler stuff, but the actual plot of what they are attempting to do in this isn't the most thrilling, I guess, is what
Sure.
I'll say. But there's a lot of great world building and a lot of really great character moments and character interactions that made me really enjoy this book. And there's just a ton of action. It's kind of nonstop the whole time. So I think I liked it slightly more than the last one, if I had to say. I'm interested to see what I think about the next one, because this one ends on such a crazy cliffhanger.
And now you're going back in time.
And now I'm going back in time. And so I understand why people do the tandem read. Yeah, I'm interested to see what my thoughts are on that one. But how did you like this one when you first read it?
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah?
This is very much my kind of a book.
Sure.
It's got some spice in it.
Yeah, and that was another thing I guess we can talk about a little bit. Not really, no. I mean, I wouldn't say so. There are full-on sex scenes in this book, which I was just not expecting, because I always kind of went into Throne of Glass being okay, this is a YA series, which is what it reads as, especially the earlier books, which makes sense because the author was,
16
when she started writing in this world.
Age, but yeah.
And it's not a YA series. I think it's technically classified as what's called new adult.
I like that.
As opposed to young adult, which the major difference being usually the protagonists are slightly older and there's sex scenes.
Yeah.
From what I can understand.
Yeah.
I actually had to stop reading this book for a minute and be I thought this was YA. And so now I need to know what the difference is really between YA and adult or new adult fiction. And
I do also find, now that we talk about it, the idea of a young adult book is when do you stop being a young adult? You know what I mean? When does that, what does that mean? Because I also read young adult books when I was a teenager. So which
is what young adult is.
Right, but then also
teen.
Are you, but young adult, I'm not a young adult as a teenager. No, you're not. You're a teenager, you're a kid.
That's just what it's for. I mean, 18 is technically you're legally an adult.
Yeah.
But then also, when are you a new adult?
When are you a new adult?
I mean, by that, you would say a new adult would definitely be 18. That is the newest adult you can find legally.
Or you could be refining your adulthood in your 30s.
This is a very pedantic argument.
It is, and I like it, and it's important.
Okay, great. Anyway.
Anywho, I absolutely love this book. This was, because I had read this series last out of the Sarah J. Maas series. I read Akhtar, the 2 Crescent City books that were out at the time. And then I read
Throne I didn't realize that you read Throne of Glass after Crescent City as well.
Did.
Interesting,
yeah.
Okay.
So this was the book where I was there she is. This is very much her style. And it's very exciting. A lot happens, specifically at the end of the book, which is classic Sarah J. Maas. But yeah, I remember really, really loving this book.
It's interesting. I had such an interesting experience reading it, because in our last discussion, I said that the last book felt like the end of part 1 of Throne of Glass. And that's kind of weird to say when, because Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms take place at the same time, there's really only 2 books. There's 3 books left, but it's really 2. If they had just combined those together, it would have just been 2 books. So it's weird to say, over halfway into the series that it's the end of part 1. But I still feel that that's true. And this book very much feels like an author who now kind of knows more and has grown, has just advanced in her craft, and is okay, how am I going to bring all of these disparate pieces together, and what do I need to introduce to tell the type of ending, to give the type of ending to the story I've been writing since I was 16. Because there is an unbelievable amount of lore dumps in this book, which I love.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it was a very interesting experience because the last one was the end of the first part, and this one feels like, I don't know because I haven't read but other Sarah J. Maas stuff, but based on what you just said, it feels like Sarah J. Maas being like, now I'm writing in Throne of Glass as the author of like Akatar and Crescent City, and the author that people like in the ways that people would normally expect, if that makes any sense. Yeah, there's so much stuff introduced in this for the first time, which is very funny to say about book 5 of a 7-book
series.
Well,
it's definitely building on what existed,
absolutely,
and like backpedaling a little bit. Not necessarily backpedaling, but like explaining things from the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, so we're probably going to start talking about more specifics. So spoilers going forward for those of you who have not read this book. If you somehow stumbled upon this video, I would recommend starting at the beginning. I'll put a link to the playlist for all of the our discussion about all of the books in this series up here. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I don't need spoilers going forward, so I don't even know where to start, really.
Okay, go.
I mean, the cliffhanger, getting taken, I'm going to start at the end,
just
for a second.
Yeah, we love that.
Because that really defied my expectations, because I knew, I knew that Tower of Dawn took place at the same time. I knew that, but still seeing this book end on such a crazy cliffhanger was honestly a really bold move.
Yeah.
I thought.
Absolutely.
Because it's such like a huge... To me, it almost seems like it would have made more sense for Tower of Dawn to come up first, though I have not read it, and maybe it ends on a crazy cliffhanger,
I do.
Too.
I remember I had a similar feeling to you of, like, when I got to the end of this, I was like, I should have done the tandem read. Because the idea of traveling back in time when you're on a cliffhanger, it was like...
I don't necessarily feel like I did. Feel like I regret not doing the tandem read.
You understand the tandem read.
I understand the tandem read, and I always did understand the tandem read, but I didn't, I understand it more now. I just... I'm sorry, am I boring you?
Sorry. It just works. I'm tired. No, you're not.
I'm just kind of surprised. I mean, it's a bold move of her to be like, I know another book is coming that's not going to continue this storyline before I continue this storyline, which I'm assuming it was at least so that would mean I would assume it's like at least 2 years, which is a lot to ask of your readers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So honestly, kudos. That's pretty dope, actually. Yeah, it just. But I am glad of how that all came about, I guess, because it was interesting. Like around the 80% mark of the book, they had gotten the lock, and what I said earlier in the video about like the plot of this not actually being that interesting. I'm interested to see what other people think, because the main plot of this book is just a fetch quest. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's, been the plot of a ton of other great fantasy stories.
You gotta fetch it.
But that's what it is. And they got the lock by like 80%. And I was like, what are we going to do for the next 20% of this book?
Some crazy things.
So a bunch of crazy stuff. And we'll talk about Maeve, I guess, a little bit later, and her motivations or lack thereof, which is my problem, my real problem there. But I thought that all was very, very well done. It was a thrilling, really intense ending. And this, of course, a secret wedding. Gotta have a secret wedding.
I honestly love secret wedding.
But
for powerful people, love secret wedding.
Of course, obviously, always gotta have secret wedding. I don't even know where to start though.
Start with characters.
Yeah, I guess so.
About?
I guess I'll start with my favorites. Allied and Lorcan was my favorite storyline in this book. Like, it's not even a contest. There's a bunch of really cool world building and lore stuff that happened specifically with like Aelin and Manon towards the end, which I really enjoyed, giving us a look at the bigger picture of the why for all of this, which I thought was great. But I don't know, this entire book was like, we're just going to pair up random characters who haven't been together before. Dorian and Rowan, sure.
Yeah, why not?
But Allied and Lorcan, I loved Allied from the last book. Mm-hmm. Lorcan I didn't really care about, but like him being with her seemed so random, though it shouldn't have. I should have immediately thought like, there cannot possibly be either a male or a female character in this series who's a POV who doesn't have a love interest, and those are basically the only two not paired up yet. So I just enjoyed the whole thing. I think Allied is great simply because she doesn't have all those powers. The bit where she like bluffs her way past the Ilkin, I thought was so funny just because of how mundane it was.
Yeah. Well, and also like growing up like so close to power and having, I don't know, I think she like learned from her background of like, and especially with the way that she was treated of like, I have to make things work for myself. Like I have to figure out how to do it. Excuse me, I have to figure out how to do it, and taking notes from the people around her, I think, that were always like smarmy and politically minded and power hungry.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right.
I love her so much.
I think she's great. I do think that, like, I'm not gonna say it was a retcon, but like the amount of description that went into like her in this book bordered on it, because you know she was around last book, and they didn't really talk about like what she looked like that much, other than the fact that she had that limp because of the thing with her ankle and her foot and brown hair. I think maybe once someone was like, maybe if they cleaned her up a bit or something, but that's really it. And in this book, there's like a few chapters in early on where like Lorcan and her are, you know, just meeting, or, you know, maybe they've just gotten in with the troupe, which I also loved. Bards or like player troops is a trope that I will always be down for. I always love them. They're always great. Sarah J. Maas like spent a few chapters pointing out like that she was a bombshell for a while, and I was just like, okay, like
look at that body, baby.
Like, okay, sure, everyone has to be hot. Like no one can just be normal,
because we all are hot.
We're all. That's very beautiful, and you're right. We all are hot.
As if you've watched, I don't know if I've ever spoken about my disdain for the plane trope.
Oh, yes, the plane.
The plane trope that many times, there was like a era in my life when I was started like a teen, probably when I was reading young adults, and is the main character would always like describe herself as like plain and like not pretty. And so I'm glad we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Everyone's hot. Because everyone's you are hot. Period. End of story.
Everyone is hot. You're hot too.
You're hot.
But I just thought it was very funny because it was not mentioned at all when she was first brought in, and then like as if to prepare us for her being romanced, we had to. Don't worry, she's attractive too. She's hot. But I really love that storyline. I also love that they're both kind of like the chosen of their particular gods, Anieth and Halas, who are also maybe. We get a lot about the pantheon here, which I really enjoy. Actually, we don't get a ton about them, but they're talked about a lot more in this book than they have been in the previous ones, in a way that, like, made me be like, oh, they're actually real. Because it's never clear until this, I don't really think, if, like, are these gods really, like, actually things? Because they just didn't play that much of a role, it feels like. And, like, Mala Firebringer and Maeve and, like, the High Fae are, like... such powerful beings that they're essentially demigods, and you know it's all very, very interesting. But I'm glad that we got a little bit of like clarification and we got to dive into that a little bit, especially because I mean, yes, they are technically the gods, and this is the pantheon of this world, I guess. But it seems because they're trapped with the word keys that they're actually just powerful beings from some other world or plane that are worshipped as deities. And maybe they're omniscient or omnipresent or omnipowerful. Maybe they're one of those omni things. But they're not. But like they are just powerful beings from another world. And you know, I really enjoyed all of that. But anyway, I liked that. You know, Lorcan and Allied together was also, you know, both of them were touched by these different gods. I thought that was a really fun thing. The scene particularly where Allied almost gets taken by Vernon again at the roadside inn, I thought was terrifying, and she tried to kill herself before stopping it. This was my favorite use of enemies to lovers so far in this series, and honestly probably my favorite enemies to lovers that I've read so far since I started reading Romantasy. I think because, like, neither of them were, like, sexed, really, to, like, begin with. Neither of them was driven or moved by, like, their romance or passions or anything like that. It kind of just, like, came organically, and it also took, like, a long time. I liked it. It wasn't so over in my face being like, okay, yes, I know, but they're obviously gonna do it later. Like, that's... which is basically any romance Aelin has been in, which is fine. But I did enjoy this. I did enjoy this a little bit more, and yeah, I mean the entire thing. And Lorcan's story is awful, kind of tragic, because he's also kind of the worst. But yeah, and you know, Allied is done with him at the end of this book. Obviously, I'm sure that will probably change in the last one. But it's, you know, and how much that affects him. and all of the very complicated things that go on with Maeve, and like her breaking the bonds with a lot of her, I don't know, the cadre. I don't remember what she calls them, the Bloodsworn, I guess. Yeah, the whole thing, their entire storyline was my favorite from this book. Close second, though, is our boy Dorian.
We love Dorian.
God, I love Dorian. I think he's my favorite individual character. He's just the best.
Yeah.
He just, this whole thing, first off, everyone's like, oh no, something bad's happening to Dorian. Of course something bad happened to Dorian. You all left him after he killed his dad, destroyed the entire castle, and was just released from being possessed by a demon. Of course stuff didn't go super great the second you left. I'm glad he didn't, like, turn evil, but edgy Dorian is so funny. I guess we'll talk about Manon, too, since... maybe we'll just go by couple. I guess that seems to be the easiest way to go. Because that's all... that basically covers all the major characters. Yeah. Anyway, him and Manon, their, I don't know, courting, I guess, for lack of a better term, is so funny. Him, like... flirting with her, leaving, coming back, and then not screwing her was just so funny to me. Great power move. Yeah, it's got a little darkness in him. And we also, like, remember... And Adian also does help a little bit in some of his POV, talking about, like, how he doesn't like Dorian and how he remembers Dorian being such a womanizer. We never really knew Dorian when he was such a womanizer. He, like... you know, only really was ever interested in Aelin in that first, or Selena, which in that first book and stuff. So we've never gotten to see him like spit game, and he has got it.
He really does. He really does.
Which is really good. I really enjoyed that. And I also love Manon as well. So both of those characters, it helps a lot when you like both of the characters and they're together.
Was this book? Oh, I don't know how to say this to you without giving you a spoiler. When does something with his hands?
Yeah, the Invisible Hands.
Invisible Hands? Okay, great. I couldn't remember.
Invisible Hands, that's some good stuff.
The Invisible Hands, I remember reading that and then being done with it, and I was like, what did I just read?
Some good
stuff.
Wait
a minute, I love that.
Yeah, some good stuff. Some A+ sex
Got
rating.
it. Yeah, Invisible Hand, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, sorry, I can't do
that. We have to
get
work on that.
I have no idea how I would even begin to.
I don't either. Magic.
But yeah, Dorian's story, aside from romance, before I dive into Manon as well, Dorian's storyline is interesting in this book. You know, he's obviously dealing with the repercussions of, you know, his power and what he's done and his father and all of that stuff. And, you know, Dorian's gone to some dark places before, so it's pretty familiar territory when reading from his POV. But it is interesting seeing him surrounded by all these, like, other, not just powerful individuals, but more powerful personalities than his. And he does seem to be okay taking a back seat a lot of the time, which makes sense, I guess, because he's kind of afraid of himself and what he can do. But yeah, overall, I'm excited. I'm excited for the fact that he's paired up with Manon. I'm excited for the growth he had. I think the sex scene that him and Manon had was great, very well written. As far as I know, I've read like 4 sex scenes. Four sex scenes that were like not supposed to just be like, this is a sex scene.
This is what we're having. They did this and it was done.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, as far as I know, it was pretty good. I had a good time. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes with him. And I'm very excited for the anticipation of the like tearful reunion I assume he will have with Kale eventually.
We got besties.
Yeah. But I'm thrilled that he's going with Manon. That like he's just off with her. That'll be super fun. Her and the 13. And speaking of, super glad that the 13 were not captured and that Astrid was not dead. If Astrid had died off screen, I would have been pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was worried because they tried to break people's spirits with that, and I was not having it. I'm really glad that
Manon, for your witches.
Exactly. I'm really glad that Manon is finally fully good, well, not fully good, but she's like morally fighting on the same side as the good people, because you know in the last book, it was, you know, great to see all this stuff happen with her and her starting to care for Elide and learning all of the wonderful things about, well, I don't know about wonderful, but learning all the things about the 13 and specifically Astrid's tragic story. But, you know, it kept being like, what is the thing that's going to break, like, your grandmother's hold over you? And, you know, of course she's also a secret queen. Gotta be a secret queen, obviously.
That was a good reveal, eh?
That was a pretty good reveal,
I remember being like, oh,
her being a Cochrane
really
queen
cool.
And her Cochrane? Did I say that right?
Cochrane?
Yeah. And her grandmother being... Krogan? I don't know.
Is there an R there?
I don't remember.
I don't know. Anyways.
Crokin probably sounds right.
Crokin feels right.
Cochrane also feels like it would be too close to Cochrane.
Maybe, yeah.
Anyway, I was legitimately afraid for a minute that she was gonna like actually kill Astrid. So I was pretty which is good on the author. I was like, is she really just gonna like, because I was just like, I guess she's just been chilling here this whole time. I mean, maybe she won't actually ever break from them, so I'm really glad that she did. And then, you know, the matron reveals that, you know, that was your half-sister that you killed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I killed your mother and your father who had you in secret. And I was like...
Yeah, whoa.
Okay. Whoa. And then she disembowels her. For good measure.
Does. Yeah, for good
For good measure. Yeah, I mean, Manon had such an interesting journey throughout this book. And then she ends... I do think that, like, they kind of were just like... Okay, she's kind of on our side now, at a certain point. There wasn't ever, like, a moment where they're like, we definitely trust you. It was just, like, suddenly she's just walking around without, like, chains, and she's got her sword again. Which, that's fine.
Yeah,
but,
we don't need to go into it.
We don't need to go into it too much. But I did also like the fact that, and it was appropriate, too, that so much of the stuff that was revealed about the Locke and Elena, and Brannon, and why all of this is happening has to do with Rhiannon Crokin. Whatever.
It's Crokin.
The last Crokin queen. And the Eye of Elena is a Crokin artifact, essentially. Yeah, I love the 13. I love Manon. I think that the way that they're I don't even really, like, know what to expect for their storyline going forward. I'm assuming they are going to find an army of Crokin witches that they will bring back. And that's great. Hopefully Dorian starts...
Make sure it's Crokin.
Starts being able to use his magic more safely. And hopefully we get a bunch more fun sex scenes between him and Manon. But...
yeah, it's Crokin.
It is Crokin? Great, Crokin. We're 100% on that. But yeah, I this was probably my second favorite couple. Dorian's definitely my second favorite storyline, and I've always loved the witches. I don't know what it is about them, but I'm just like 100%.
Well, it's also like it's just different than like a regular human fighting for power. That happen to be like empowered humans. It's like this is like such a way of life, such a culture, and so to like be, and also you're involved with a crew. You know, like you have the 13, you have your crew, so it's not just like a one-off person like. Kids simply couldn't be me.
Yeah.
You know, the classic trope.
Classic trope. And Abraxas just, everyone's like, what a, I love how everyone's
he's just
like,
on the flowers.
He's just like a gentle wyvern.
Yeah.
There's like multiple jokes about how like, I don't know how you ended up with this like softy of a wyvern. And I'm like, yeah, Abraxas is the best. He just wants to smell the flowers.
He just wants...
Leave him alone. Who else? Who are the other, okay, so the other main couples, Lysandra and Adian.
Yeah.
Adian had an interesting journey in this one. There was a bit where he actually, like, hated on Aelin, and I kind of liked that. Because she's always kind of right, and she always, like, saves the day and does the right thing, a lot of the time at least, and so it was kind of nice to have him, like, calling her out, and being pissed about it.
Almost in a way that only family could.
Yes, exactly. And I did like it. He then kind of felt bad about it afterwards, because it turned out that, she just hadn't like told them everything. But that's still, I think, a good enough reason at this point to be pissed off at her. I know they kind of like make a joke of it after Ansel shows up. Thank God, finally from Assassin's Blade.
Ansel shows up. I've been holding my tongue for so long.
3 books later, but when Ansel finally shows up, which was great reveal. But like,
I was so pumped.
And they like make a joke about, she like keeps these secrets from everyone because she, wants to see the shocked look on their faces or whatever. And then there's also like more serious stuff about how she's like afraid to fail and all that yada yada yada. But like, that's a legitimate reason to be pissed at her at this point.
Yeah.
Because he was like, oh, I feel so bad that I was like yelling at her and stuff like, no, she's kind of being crappy. Like it's stopped being cute.
Yeah.
That she like won't share her plans with anyone. And it clearly at the very end of the book has like potentially destroyed Adian's relationship with Lysandra because he was essentially, without his consent, like put into a plan in which he would be sleeping with Lysandra, maybe knowing it's Lysandra, maybe thinking it's his cousin, and she has to seduce him as Aelin, which I I will say, didn't love that we did not just one, but two reveals that Aelin has like a whole secret army that she's decided to meet at this exact spot at this exact time, blah blah blah. I was just like, okay, fine.
You're supposed to go.
It was cool, but I was like, this is the second time we've done this in this book. Like, okay, like, and I knew it was going to happen, but the fact that it was like such a big moment at the end of this, I was like, this could have happened like at the end of the last book. May as well have. Like, it doesn't. The thing that made it, I'm trying to think of a word that's not like okay. The thing that made me just be like, oh, okay, I'm on board with this now, is that Lysandra immediately jumped into being Aelin, and we got to see her pretend to be her and interact with these people who were her friends from, you know, the Red Wastes or wherever, and like lie to them and like start that right away. Because I kind of thought that was going to be a thing that they did, but obviously Rowan and some of them are going to go after Aelin, so like we probably wouldn't see it too much, and maybe we still won't, but the fact that we got a glimpse of it now and how angry Aedion is about it and how he has to go with her is I really enjoyed. I thought that was...
No, I agree with you.
That was...
It is so frustrating to read, but it felt very much of like, this is something that I would believe happened in this scenario.
Absolutely.
And it also, I think it is interesting of like, I love Lysandra and Aelin's relationship.
Yes.
And how it's very much like she was conspiring with her. Like, she was more important to her than her cousin at that point of like, I'm conspiring with this person that I trust absolutely, this woman, this friend of mine that I trust absolutely. And he's just going to have to follow it along. Where I think that's probably what pissed him off, is of like, why are you not telling me? Also, it's a crazy thing to assume that you're just going to be down with, like, an insane thing.
Well, because they knew he wouldn't be, so obviously and that's why they didn't tell him.
But it is, like, I remember taking from that of, like, liking the strength, that it just showed so much the strength of Lysandra and Aelin's friendship, you know?
Yeah. I really... I
also love Lysandra, so...
I love her too. I think Aedian's storyline was so interesting also because he had to deal with his dad, Gavriel, and like his relationship with him, or lack thereof, really, and his like surprise at his own anger at his father.
Yeah,
which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, so I'm interested to see, because he's staying with Lysandra and all those people, so I am very interested to see like what comes of that. I assume eventually sexy time, but you know, we'll see. I really enjoyed their relationship though, and how kind of like soft it was, and how like considerate he is trying to be of her past and what she may or may not be interested in at this time, but how super into her he is.
She's obviously super hot,
and she can change into any other hot person she wants,
or hot like animal. I wasn't
yeah.
saying for sexy time. I don't, you know.
Yeah.
You can cut that.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not going to cut that. But
I just think her power as a shapeshifter is so cool.
It's great.
It's so cool. I just want more of it.
Really enjoyed everything she did. One of the best action sequences in the book, I thought, was her as the sea dragon underwater, trying to trying to fight the sea wyverns, which I thought was kind of funny. But they were terrifying. And succeeding, yeah. I thought that was a thrilling sequence, awesome. Really intense. She was fantastic in that. And yeah, I mean, her relationship with Aelin, the fact that she's like basically almost always transformed into some kind of creature, and just her character is very interesting, I think. And I think that her relationship with specifically Aelin and Aedion, and the fact that they're cousins, I really enjoyed everything about it. Everything about both of them was something. And I think the thing about this book is that, yeah, I mean, like, maybe the plot is relatively simple, but Sergei Maas shines when it comes to character relationships anyway. That's like what. So that's why I enjoyed this book. And you know, and of course with her as a sea dragon, basically like creating a reason for the Mycenaeans, whatever their names are.
Oh yeah.
To like be a thing, which of course Rolf is one of. Sure, fine.
With this gold hat.
That's one of those things where I'm like, okay, like we're building. It's funny because I mean I don't know what her other series are like, but it's very clear in this book that she's built the world that she's created. This is the book where she was suddenly like, I feel confident enough to just like make a bunch of crap up to fill any gaps in the story that I need filled because I'm writing towards the end right now. So she's just creating the world to fill the story, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is kind of funny that there's so many. Like, there's that. They talk about, like, the yielding for the first time, which is the witch's power, where they're suddenly, like, and I'm sure that's not going to come into play in any very sad way, like maybe Astrid is going to, like, sacrifice herself or something like that. Who knows? But some witch is going to do that and blow herself up and save a bunch of people, and it's going to be very tragic and emotional. And it's what it is.
Blow herself up.
Exactly. The Mycenaeans, or however you say that, and Rolf, of course, is actually one. And, like, of course, that, like, all of the stuff about the sea dragon, that's, like, their symbol. What else? Oh yeah, there's that flower that like bloomed during Brandon's reign and is now thought of as a sign of like the kingdom being ruled well, and it bloomed once during like her uncles or great uncles or something. I just bet that it might in fact bloom when she becomes Queen of Terrasin, whatever. So there's just a noticeable number of things like that suddenly appear for the first time in book 5. Which is all great. I mean, it's all really... I will give Sarah J. Maas credit. Sometimes her world building is hit or miss for me, but she seems to never run out of super creative ideas, which in a fantasy world, that's all you really want.
Yeah.
So it's great. I love it.
Even if they're coming in late to the game, it's like, oh yeah, this sounds like a great idea.
This sounds dope. I'm like, honestly, you know what? It totally does.
If you thought of that 6 years later, 10 years later, okay, cool.
I mean, when I was 16, I could barely write, so you're doing great in my book.
My stories were not even this cool.
But...
I thought they were.
Yes, so I guess we should talk about Aelin and Rowan, which, again...
Your least favorite characters.
They're not my least favorite characters, they're I mean, I guess they're my least favorite, but...
I was gonna say, I feel like we're like going down the tier.
If you are ranking them, then yes,
yeah,
that's probably it.
Okay, I'm not mad at
but that doesn't mean I don't like them, it just means that I really like some of the other supporting characters
I agree
more.
with you, yeah.
And maybe in the next book that'll change, but I didn't enjoy that, like, part of the story was about, like, they didn't want to say I love you to each other. And that's also partially because I didn't entirely understand something about, like, Fae and mates. I didn't realize that you're supposed to only have one. That was something I think I must have missed somehow.
Sure.
And so I didn't really understand, like, why is this a thing? Like, why are we acting like teenagers? Though I do remember that she is 19.
Yeah.
But he's, like, 600. So, like...
At least.
Come on.
At least.
But, yeah, so I thought that was something I could have avoided. But, you know, when they had their sex scene, I was just like... Spicy. What am I... Wait.
There's biting...
Well, no, none of that, like, not like, bits of the actual sex scene, other than the fact that I was completely thinking sand in every crevice. But I do think that velvet-wrapped steel is a fantastic euphemism. A+ right there.
Yeah.
But that was the moment where I was like, wait, I thought this was a YA book, and I thought the YA books were specific, like, that was the delineation, and then I went off on a huge tangent, and instead of reading, spent like an hour researching what the difference between all of those things is. But anyway, I really did like both of their storylines. I mean, Rowan getting to save Dorian and getting to spend some time with him was cool, because we haven't gotten to see them interact at all, and I like the fact that Rowan was able to start kind of teaching him about his magic, and at the same time, we spent a lot of time talking about magic in this book, and like, they really started showcasing how the fire magic isn't just like, oh, you're super powerful. It's that, like, you need to let it off, and there's no way for it to not really be destructive. And they really showed, like, the danger of using that much power, which I thought was very good, because we've heard about it a lot, but it hasn't really been that, like, there haven't been that many catastrophic failures or problems with her using her power yet until now, and it's happened multiple times in this book. You know, the biggest one being when she almost blows up the Skull Island and a god takes over her body. Yeah. Which was when I was officially like, okay, so we're actually going to deal with, like, the gods and what's happening here. Sure. Okay, whoa. That entire sequence, the fight for Skull's Bay, Lysandra, Aelin getting taken over by a god, that whole thing was A+. The whole thing. I loved it. You know, and how she's, like, has all of the power of Mala. And how that is terrifying, honestly. And getting to see it from other people's perspectives too, like Allied seeing her unleash all of her power and being terrified of it also helped in that respect. But, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll go back to Rowan, and I think my favorite part of Rowan's storyline in this was when he like went, because it was the first time he really got to do something by himself, for no one else. Well, not for no one else, but like when he went to all of his cousins and got them all to like join him. That was cool. I mean, that's like the fourth army that someone has gotten onto their side in this book. That's what you're doing. You're trying to get
your home back.
Yeah, it's true. But I really enjoyed that. It was nice to see him not doing something because Aelin told him to.
Yeah.
Which he is supposed to be this general who knows all these things and stuff. And so it's nice to see him like take the initiative and do it other than like be a part of one of her plans. So I really enjoyed that. And the cadre kind of coming back together, essentially. And all ending up on the same side. And all of them kind of getting banished, except for the hot one, who it's funny that there's a hot one in a world where everyone is the hot one.
The hottest.
But I liked Aelin's storyline in this much more than I think I've liked her storylines really in any of the other books, largely because we finally find out, like, what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, they go to the temple, and she's told she needs to find the lock. She gets taken over by a god and is once again told she needs to find the lock. They finally find the lock. Dorian, of course, is the one who figures out what's going on because he's our boy. And then they go into the witch glass. And
I forgot about that.
Finally we get the whole story. And like it's all because Olenna basically disobeyed her dad because he wouldn't communicate with her. I assume probably because she'd be pretty upset because he's like, my plan is to kill myself to do this. And your mother also gave up her life to create this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's fair. But us finally getting like, okay, so this is why all of this is happening. I really, really appreciate it. The counterpoint to that of Maeve taking Aelin and taking the word keys and stuff, I liked everything that happened. I liked her plan. I liked the way it worked. I liked the surprise at the end and all the action it led to at the end and the huge cliffhanger and her taking Aelin and the symbolism of Aelin being whipped again and her putting her in the masks and in like the iron coffin essentially. But I don't love that she gave Maeve a whole like villain monologue and Maeve still doesn't explicitly say why she even wants the keys. Mm. She just is like, I want power. And if that's it, that's cool. But she doesn't even just say that.
Yeah.
She just says, I will wield the keys and Aelin fire a higher heart or whatever. And she doesn't like give a reason. It's the same thing with the matron. We still don't know why the matron is actually working for Erewhon. They say, I think later in the book, that it's like he promised to give
something.
The promise to give the wastes back to them, like to break the curse. And I don't know, it just feels like it was too little too late because their whole thing is about like preserving which kind. And like they're not all their witchlings are dying and she's willing to sacrifice witches to give birth to these demon spawn, and it doesn't add up to me.
Yeah,
like I buy that her wanting to get their land, the matron wanting to get their land back is absolutely a thing. I don't buy that she would be willing to sacrifice her own like Blackbeak, which like maybe Yellow Legs, maybe whatever the blue peep sky, whatever. Yeah, but not Blackbeak witches. It doesn't. That just doesn't add up to me. But yeah, the same thing with Maeve. Maeve is just like, and if Maeve is just power hungry and wants power, then that's all fine. But it's just it's vague. Like she talks so much about like my plans and all this stuff, and this is how I've trapped you, and that's all great. But it's not. She doesn't give a reason for it other than just like I want it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. And my problem is she doesn't even actually just say that. She doesn't say anything.
Yeah, she's like, I'm doing it.
I'm just doing it. I am just doing it, and. I don't know. I'm left wanting more because she's like the alternate villain, kind of. And yeah, so that is one of really my only like really big gripe is I'm just like, okay, great, but why? So yeah, so that's. But otherwise, I thought the ending was fantastic. Well, I guess Darrow. I should talk about Darrow. What a dick he is.
Oh, yeah, he sucks.
It was one of those things. I think I wrote in my notes. I was literally just like, well, I mean, there was no other way this could go because this is book 5 of 7 and there needs to be like a conflict. Mm-hmm. But Bleh, okay. I agreed with some of the other characters actually said this, where they're like, she's taking this too like timidly, and I thought the same thing, and I thought that was weird, and I understand. I guess it could be justified by like she doesn't want to. Selena and Aelin are not really the same person. They are the same person, but they're not the same persona. And I guess she doesn't want to like take Terrasen as Selena or have to take it at all because it's hers. But we spent the whole book, the whole series, with her being like this arrogant for better or for worse, like arrogant, swaggering heroine. And this is like the first time she's suddenly not. And it just feels like a very like, what a time for her to experience any kind of growth in any meaningful way. Is the first time it would actually impact the plot in such a large way. But then it's also kind of revealed that like she needed to go to all these places to gather all her armies to her. So of course that's kind of fine, I guess. But I don't know. I've been talking so much. Do you have anything that you want? No,
you read it recently. It's all about you. It's your first time. I like this book. I remember thinking that this was the first time that, like you said, like Aelin really showed some emotional growth, because she can be a really harsh character, which I kind of love about her, because it's not something I've ever felt like I could be, and I tend to like characters like that because I'm like, you're awesome and so powerful. But this time around, you really see more of her inner workings, and I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah, I think that a lot of questions get answered, or a lot of things really just get clarified in this book, which is why I like it. And, you know, as I said, like earlier, in the beginning of the book, they were talking about the gods, and it seemed like they were starting to get mentioned more, and one of my notes was literally like, I'm super pumped about all of this, but like, can I please have an idea of what this pantheon even is?
Yeah.
Because we barely talked about it. So I'm super pumped that we got a lot more information about it. And you know, I still got a ton of questions, and I'm sure some of them will be answered and some of them won't be, and that's kind of the nature of books like this. You know, for the most part, that was one of my favorite parts. The fact that we got so much Olenna and Brannon, and we learned about that really tragic history, the sacrifice, the mistake that she made, I guess, the sacrifice that she made for the future of her bloodline, how Brannon like raged against that and did his best to help his future descendants. How angry the gods are, also how like alien they are. I kind of really liked that when Aelin got possessed, Diana, I think is the god who possessed her, was like, essentially her actions made no sense. Like she was like, I want to see what I can do, and I mean, I could destroy these people coming to kill us, or I could see if I could blow up this whole island.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. And it, you know, it doesn't really actually make sense, but when you look at it from the perspective of like these beings, whatever they are, don't think like us. They're a different type of life form.
Sure, yeah.
I actually like it quite
that's a good point. I didn't think about it that way.
Because at the beginning I was like, wait, this is what? Is she evil? Because at first I was like, oh, it's a god. That's probably a good thing. And I was like, oh wait, are they evil? And then I was like, or maybe the whole point is just to show that they're not human. Yeah. Whatever they are,
don't think like humans.
They do not think
like mortals. Or they're so
mortals.
Powerful that they don't.
They don't think like mortals. Which I thought that was a nice touch. I do say, going back to Aelway, or whatever the name is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce that country. Nehemia's home. I will say brought something into stark relief, which is like a legitimate issue I think I've kind of had since like book 2, is that when they killed Nehemia, they killed the only main character of color, and we've gotten a ton of new characters. Like, I don't think that there's been a single new character of color introduced into this series since Nehemia died, which is, like, not awesome. Like, they fridged Nehemia to motivate Aelin, and, like, they doubled down on that in this book about how, like, Nehemia, like, went to the Stone Marshes and talked with Olenna and, like, knew going to Rifthold who Selena actually was and what she would have to do to motivate her, and, like, so that's not, like, I appreciate the backstory, I guess, but it is essentially fridging, and you never want to do that to, like...
Fridging is when you kill someone to give them motivation?
Essentially, yeah. So
give another character motivation.
Yes, it's a very common trope when it comes to...
We've talked about this before, I just forgot the term.
Yeah, when it comes to, like, motivating men to do things, especially in, like, action movies and things like that.
They'll kill their lover.
Or it's also very common when, in, like... all forms of media, when a gay couple like finally gets together, one of them will die.
Oh, I didn't know that was common in the media. Yeah. That's horrible.
Yeah, it's not great. Anyway, so just wanted to point that out it is noticed. Especially, well, it's not.
Just like your delivery.
Sorry, I didn't mean that was a weird delivery, but it is noticed. It's just like it's especially because we're finally back at her country, and I suddenly realized we have not met anyone else from that country, and no one else of color has like ever.
I think
up.
some of the men are definitely like.
Are they
on the not like not maybe like mixed on the darker? I mean, there's a lot of like olive skin, but. You're right. There's no one else that's described as a darker skin
so that's
person.
not. So I don't love that, but. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, overall, this book, I think, was a definite step up. I'm trying to see if I have any other notes. Oh, and there's one other thing that did bother me. One other major thing that did bother me. I don't love that Maeve was like, I tricked Rowan. And there's nothing you can really do about this, because, of course, Aelin and Rowan have to be mates because that's just, that it's the most romantic thing. I don't like that Maeve tricked Rowan into... loving Lyria, and like them essentially retconning that, because it diminishes that relationship. I remember thinking that same thing. I really don't like it. It's honestly,
and it's also unnecessary.
It's I think it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah,
I really do. I think that the scene entirely could have played, and that's my problem with it. Yeah, it's like I had a problem, and we've spoken about this before, where I'm like, I feel like the Sam thing was undermined by the fact that it's revealed that they really only actually were together for like a month, and the argument, of course, is like it's your first big love and that's so passionate and all that stuff, and that's totally valid. But that's just an opinion thing. I firmly believe that this entire ending sequence would have played out exactly the same if that part hadn't been in Maeve's like 2-page villain monologue. And it would have changed basically nothing.
No, I agree with you. I remember thinking a similar thought of like why even have it there at all? Because like Rowan also is at the point with Aelin where like he doesn't need to rethink his past relationship. Like they've talked about it, they went through it, so it's not like we need to know that he's choosing her. Like he already is. He's over it too as much as he can. Like move on with his life, and it just belittles that.
And as I've said, I think the first time I talked about like females and mates and all that stuff, and how I was like, I think this is the antithesis of romance because you don't have a choice. I still believe that it would be more romantic if they weren't mates and they chose each other for 1,000 years. Like that's the most romantic thing I could think of. If you want to be with someone for a millennia, that's crazy.
Do you want to be with me for a millennia?
Obviously, yes.
Thanks.
But anyway, no, we're not. No, we're not. Anyway, but overall, I really enjoyed this book. I think that her game as an author, maybe not like, I don't know if I could say like prose-wise and stuff, but organizationally and storyline-wise, and I think confidence, stepped up pretty big in this, because you can just see that she's so confident changing stuff and making new stuff up in this book. Like the last few books, obviously she's continuing to grow as an author, but in this book she adds so many different things and then brings so many other things together that I think you can tell that she's really like found herself and hit her stride. I think exactly right. But that's really my thoughts. Do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay, great. Well, what do you want to rate this out of?
Could be sea dragons.
Could be sea dragons. I was thinking witch glasses.
Oh, that's a good one. A mirror.
Yeah.
That's probably more important than sea dragon. I just like the sea
dragon. I like
the
sea dragon too, but also I don't know what a sea dragon would be. It would just be a dragon. We've done dragons before, I think, for another video.
Probably.
So I'm gonna do. Let's do witch class. So I am going to give this a 4, which I know 4 out of 5 witch classes. I think that's what I gave the last book as well. This is a stronger 4.
I love that. A 4 with
it's a 4 with feeling, a high 4. I think this book was a step up in a lot of ways. I think the really major thing that didn't like put it up to like a 4.5 or anything higher is the fact that when you break it down, it was literally just like a fetch quest to find the lock.
Sure.
But again, I think that Sarah J. Maas's strongest suit is writing her characters and their interactions, and that's what this book had in spades. So I really liked it.
Yeah. I'd give this one a 5 witch classes.
5 witch classes.
I was so excited reading this one. Oh my gosh. In the end, so much happened.
Yeah, so much happens in the end. It was great. I was literally
like you, look, I'm obsessed with Dorian.
Yeah.
Dorian and Manon together is the greatest.
I thought those were the hottest sex scenes.
Oh my gosh, just
like,
literally give me more of them. I want them to have their own novella of just them just getting it down. And I love Elide. I love Elide first, and then I then also love Elide and Lorcan because like I feel like he's good for my Elide that I love.
Yeah.
And I love seeing Aelin's growth. I also like seeing Rowan be kind of more of a human. I don't know. I think we get more of him
I can see
rather
that.
than being like grumpy. You know, I think Rowan in Love is a very different character.
Absolutely.
And I like that a lot. But yeah, this book is so exciting. And
where was my wife?
Literally,
I was like, of course.
Oh, I was dying. And we got some spice in this book, so like I can't.
Did get some spice in this book. It was very
near
good.
perfect book for me.
I liked it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, those are our thoughts on Empire of Storms. Do you agree? Do you disagree? We'd love to discuss it in the comments down below with you. If you have somehow gotten to the end of this video and would like to see more of our Throne of Glass videos, because you haven't watched them yet, there is a link to watch those down in the description below to that playlist. And thank you all so much for watching, and
we'll see you on our next adventure.